Okay. Welcome to UPARS Los Angeles. My name is Steve Murillo. I'm the director for UPARS LA. Tonight we have a very special guest, Barbara Lamb. Barbara Lamb has been in the abduction research field for many, many years and has many patients that she's helped over those years put the abduction experience into context that helps them adjust to what's happening to them. I just want to thank her publicly for her work and acknowledge her for being here. Thank her for being here tonight. Just put your hands together and welcome Barbara Lamb.
Thank you, Steve. Sure. Well, it's really nice to... Okay. And do I need to have this other one clipped on?
No, I think it'll pick up pretty good.
Okay, yeah. Can you hear me now? A little closer? Okay. Without swallowing it. Anyway, I've been here before, talking to you quite a number of times over the years, starting back in the early 1990s, and I have talked on different occasions about crop circles, and particularly the crop circles in England, and I've talked to you about ET abductions, encounters, I would prefer to call them. And I've talked about past life therapy, past life regressions. And this time, I'm talking about the subject that is nearest and dearest to my heart at this particular time in life, and that is the subject of ET human hybrids who are actually living here amongst us on Earth. Well, for many years, starting in 1991, after doing quite a number of years of past life regression therapy, and by the way, this is all part of my psychotherapy practice, so I'm just not the usual old counselor who does couple counseling and family counseling, individual counseling, although I still do plenty of that and really respect that work very much. But starting in 1991, it happened that people started coming to me who had, they knew, very unusual experiences that they usually remembered just a little bit of, maybe a minute or two of at the beginning or maybe the end after they had been returned. And it turned out that those were what we call extraterrestrial encounters. And so one woman, the first person I came to me, she worked with me for 6 sessions, and I thought, wow, what am I getting into? How can I possibly help this person who'd been so traumatized? And miraculously, from my point of view, after 6 sessions, she came in and she said, you know what? I'm fine with this now. In fact, I feel like I'm privileged. I'm honored that these beings, wherever they come from, they're certainly not from here, but wherever they come from, and they're taking me away and also doing things to me here in my room without taking me away sometimes. But anyway, I feel like I'm privileged and I'm honored and complimented that they would choose me to do these things with. Well, I was amazed because, like probably most of you, prior to that time, I had been hearing all this sort of fearful, dreadful, booga booga about alien abduction and how horrible it must be for everybody. And here was this beautiful young woman saying, I feel honored and privileged. So I began to think, wow, I'd like to know more about this. If anyone would ever happen to come to me again with this kind of situation, I'd be willing to continue to work with that. So that was spring of 1991, and since then there have been about 1,750 different individuals who've come over these many years, 25 years now, and all of them with ET encounter scenarios that they, again, as I said, would remember just a little bit of, and not be aware of the whole body of the experience where they really had things going on with these other beings. And some of those people were from around here, Southern California. I'm in Claremont, about an hour east of here, less than that when it's no traffic, heavy traffic. But anyway, so some of them have been close enough that they've come for, in some cases, 20 regressions over a period of a few years, or 40 regressions. One woman, 60, I think, is the largest number of regressions to ET experiences that one person came to me for, to do the regressions and find out the details. So, and then some of them, because they came a number of times, it's been at least 2,400 regressions that I've done to these ET encounters. So I say that only to give kind of a groundwork for the fact that I've really learned a lot. My goodness, from these people's experiences, I've learned about many, many different kinds of beings, probably 60 or so different types. And they don't give their names necessarily. Once in a while they do, but in the encounters they don't say, oh, hello, I'm from the Pleiades, or I'm from Arcturus, or, they usually don't do that. People might find out one way or the other, but they don't sort of announce that. But there certainly is quite a large number of these beings who do come here and interact with humans. Now, some of these beings, as you very well have heard, I'm sure, seem to be more self-serving. They seem to come and be very, very matter-of-fact, and they might be doing physical checkups or pokings and probings and taking of samples of skin fluids, etc. And they seem to be just very concertedly focused on that sort of thing for, it seems, for their own purposes. And there are a number of different types of beings that do that. But I began to realize, especially on a second and third and subsequent regression with some people, that these beings actually, to our surprise, were, in their physical checkup sort of work, were actually helping these people. For instance, in some cases they could detect that the person had, for instance, a liver problem or a kidney problem or ulcerated something problem, and would warn the person who'd been abducted and was there on a medical table. And very often I found that some of the beings were actually doing healing work on these abducted people, healing them of some pretty serious things. Like one man whom I worked with for a period of 8 or 9 years, and we did many, many regressions, and he always found himself with the same gray being, not one of the little grays, but sort of a, maybe 5'7" tall gray being who had big eyes, but they had facets in them. He kept calling them, oh, there's the being with the beveled eyes, like beveled glass. And that being actually said he could be called Mazu, and that being did a lot of healing of this man again and again and again, because the man had a congenital hole in his heart. And of course, if that starts leaking blood, that is definitely not going to be functional for that person. So he kept putting what he called an invisible magnetic strip over the hole in this man's heart. And this actually started before the man was even born. In other words, when he was in his mother's womb, and he was several months along in the gestation period, and he was visited by this extraterrestrial male who spoke to him, right through the walls of the room, and said, I am here actually to help you. You have a congenital hole in your heart. And if I were not to be here to help you with that, that when you're born, you'd only live a very, very short time. Your system wouldn't be able to sustain the bleeding heart. So I'm putting an invisible electromagnetic strip over the hole in your heart. And then we had many regressions over a period of the 9 years or so that I worked with him, each one to a different age, when he'd be taken and then put on what seems to be a medical type table. And then this same ET, the Mazu with the beveled eyes, would approach him and say, I'm going to be refurbishing the electromagnetic strip over the hole in your heart. And so, in other words, every year, it seemed like, from the regressions we did, every year of that whole person's life until he was about age 50, he was taken, the same ET being, Mazu, put the refurbishing, maybe a new electromagnetic strip or repairing it. And so the man grew up to be 6'4", and big and burly and energetic, and did physical labor for his work and carried on very, very well. And then he was realizing, he and his doctors, that he did have kind of a heart problem. But it was 50 years of his life before he realized that he did have this problem. So he went into the hospital with Earth doctors here and had surgery. And his wife, fortunately, happened to be a surgical nurse, and she was given permission to be in the surgery room and observe the surgery of her husband and this heart surgery. And so she witnessed that the doctors, when they opened him up and saw his heart, and said out loud, and she could hear it, said, this man has a hole in his heart the size of a silver dollar, and yet it's only leaking a little bit. There's something holding that blood in. That was the invisible electromagnetic strip, I'm sure. And so that was terrific that she actually witnessed that and got that corroboration about him. So anyway, they did their usual Earth medical surgery, and he went on for a few more years. Unfortunately, he did eventually die of a heart attack. But he'd been kept alive by this ET for all those years, at least, 50, maybe 52, 53, 54 years, which I thought was pretty darn nice that he could do that. So that's just one example of the many kinds of cases. But all along the way, I began to realize that many, many people whom I was regressing, both males and females, human males and females, that they were having hybrid children. And I did give a whole lecture on that, oh gosh, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, I think, maybe here. And some of you might have heard that. I won't go into all the details of that, but those hybrids that are created from taking eggs from the human woman and sperm from the human men and mixed with extraterrestrial reproductive material to create hybrids, those hybrids typically have been living on the spaceship. They're not